I was just about to go to a rugby camp with my little boy Alfie when my phone rang, and it was my mother-in-law, and I thought I'd ring her back, so in a bit of a rush it rang again. And then me and my son in the car, was 6 at the time, and I just answered the phone and she was screaming down the phone, "Our Andrew's dead." I remember walking in, you could have cut the atmosphere with a knife, and I said, "Elaine, what's happened?" And she couldn't say it. I said, "Is it a car crash? He died." "Well, tell me, Elaine, what's happened?" She just said, "Look, Andy's killed himself." I said, "He can't have killed himself, Elaine. He was at my house yesterday." I said, "I'm seeing him tomorrow. He's on about buying an house." I said, "Look, he's killed himself in woods across road." And it was like someone had sucker punched me. We live in a world now where we want to try blame and try and look at what other people can do, but it were a question I'd come up with when I did a dark time, which was, what are you going to do, Luke? And sort of felt like I was faced with that there. What are you going to do about this now? I approached my mother-in-law, I asked if we could set this club up. Originally we were going to call Andy Roberts Coffee Club, really name. She said, "I don't want it to be just about Andy, this problem's too big." I just put a post out on Facebook, and it got a lot of people interested. You know, this sounds amazing, it's just what's needed. So I know that by his 10th birthday, which is a year in June the 30th, we will open his 500th group. At that point then, on the average number of men, we're going to be opening over 10,000 men a week.
Our first guest is a former professional rugby player turned mental health advocate and entrepreneur. And after experiencing firsthand the impact of mental health struggles, he founded Andy's Man Club, a nationwide movement that is changing the conversation around men's mental health and well-being. With peer support groups across the UK, Andy's Man Club has created a safe space where thousands of men can speak openly, support each other and break down the stigma surrounding mental health. His work has earned national recognition, and his passion and resilience as a leader is truly inspiring. He's here today to share his journey, the lessons he's learned about mental strength, and how leaders can create open, supportive workplace cultures. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to welcome onto the Expert Lounge sofa, Luke Ambler.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Luke, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. So I thought we'd start off by exploring your journey. So can you walk us through what led you from a career in rugby to founding Andy's Man Club and becoming a motivational speaker? Yeah,
so I've had a background in mental health or mental ill health for a long time. Just to give you a bit of a quick summary. When I was 8 years old, my parents separated. A lot of people have been through separations and everyone deals with it differently. When I was a kid, I used to comfort eat, which meant I had a hard time at school, which led to the rugby, because the rugby were something where I could express myself. I think it's really important that we've all got avenues to express ourselves. And what were interesting was, looking back, was what was a big flaw for me as a kid, being this big kid. It were a strength for me at rugby. You know, you give a fat kid rugby ball, he scores tries, everyone loved me at rugby. At school, it was a bit of a different case. And then my dad won custody, which is unheard of now, never mind 20, 30 years ago. And my mum had a car crash. I should drive to school to get me, which left her with brain damage. So she has a very rare illness called non-epileptic attack disorder, which basically means my mum drops, she falls, she can knock her teeth out, break a jaw, cheekbone, you name it, she's done it. So they had to move from a house she lived in to a little disabled bungalow, where she still lives to this day. And I saw the massive impact of her having a mental illness and how that affected her mental health, to her having severe anxiety, not leaving her house for 4 years, not once, depression, and then suicidal tendencies. So I learned a lot about mental health at a very young age. And I had a variety of other challenges, which we might get into later on, between that point and Andy's Man Club. But Andy's Man Club, how that came about is that I'd built myself up from all these challenges that we might get into today to be in a really good headspace. I was playing it here actually for Halifax. I'll never forget it. I was just about to go to a rugby camp with my little boy Alfie when my phone rang, and it was my mother-in-law. And I thought I'd ring her back, so in a bit of a rush it rang again. And then me and my son in the car, was 6 at the time, and I just answered the phone and she was screaming down the phone, "Our Andrew's dead." And I said, "What?" She said, "Our Andrew's dead." I said, "I'm on my way." I dropped Alfie off at the Shea, as we're about to go coach at this camp, dropped him off there, and I shot to my mother-in-law's house. And I'm from a really big Irish family, right? I lost a lot of people growing up. But when I walked into my mother-in-law's house, it was different to any death I'd ever experienced. You know, I've had people, mates who died on rugby fields, kids who'd got killed at school, but nothing ever would have prepared me for this. I remember walking in, you could have cut the atmosphere with a knife, and I said, "Elaine, what's happened?" And she couldn't say it. I said, "Is it a car crash? He died." "Well, tell me, Elaine, what's happened?" She just said, "Look, Andy's killed himself." I said, "He can't killed himself laying at my house yesterday. I said, I'm seeing him tomorrow, he's on about buying an house. I said, look, he's killed himself in Woods across road. And it was like someone had sucker punched me. And I remember in that moment though thinking, if I feel like this, how does she feel as a mum? I'm going to tell me about her baby boy. And I remember the sort of the devastation that quickly caused, and I had this bit of a fear called what's next, and that was my ultimate thing of resilience, which is we live in a world now where we want to try blame and try and look at what other people can do, but it were a question I'd come up with when I did a dark time, which was, what are you going to do, Luke? And sort of felt like I was faced with that there. What are you going to do about this now? And I thought, the only thing I can do right now is step up and not have my mother-in-law delivering this message, you know, person after person. So first person through the door was my partner. I have to explain to her little brother had killed himself and watch her crumble in front of me. Then he were aunties, uncles, friends, one by one. But I always say the single hardest thing I've ever done, and touch wood, I'd have to do this any time soon, was when I drove up to my mum's house, who now had my little boy Alfie. And I'll never forget the image of him on swings in back garden. And we pulled in and my partner just said, look, you've told everyone today, I'll tell Alfie. I said, okay. I'll never forget noise at gate shutting. We pick him up off swings and, you know, we're both clearly upset, you know, overwhelmed. My partner, we're getting more overwhelmed. He's starting to say what's wrong because he can see something's not right. And yeah, she got overwhelmed, said, look, just tell him. So I said, Alfie, Uncle Andy's, he's died, he's gone to heaven. And I always say the screeching which he let out as a 6-year-old boy will live with me forever. Because as a parent, you have 2 jobs, though, you provide and protect. And I felt a failure. I couldn't protect my little boy. I couldn't protect my family. So driving down to mother-in-law's house, the typical question a lot of us ask ourselves when we're going through an hard time, why me? Why us? And everything that we're going around speaking about, all his mindsets I said it were all because none of it were going to bring Andy back. And I'll never forget, there was like 5 times it went through my head of all these little beliefs I had about being a radiator, being a positive energy, doing the right things mentally, looking after yourself. You're like, that can't bring Andy back, that can't bring Andy back, that can't bring Andy back, that can't bring Andy back. And then slowly in my own head, it just went, that can't bring Andy back. So he said, what are you going to do about it? And then I went home and found out that the biggest threat to my life as a man under 45 was me. And I thought, if I didn't know that as a professional rugby player, we're getting lots of resources. Andy definitely wouldn't know about it. And then it was just a very simple case of, let's start something where men can go and talk, where men's biggest threat to their life don't have to be himself.
I mean, you know, that's an incredibly powerful story, and you tell it really articulately now. I'm sure in that sort of immediate aftermath, although it sounds like there was real clarity at that time, with any sort of trauma like that, you've got those first few hours, days, weeks. How do you get through those small milestones?
Yeah.
You obviously got there and you created Andy's Man Club, but what advice would you give to someone that's gone through a trauma like that? How do they get through the next hour, the next day?
So there's 2 sides to this. One is within 4 days I had Andy's Man Club done what I wanted to do for men, and we left it 3 months because obviously approaching my mother-in-law within 4 days of her son dying, saying I didn't want him to die in a thing would have been quite insensitive, so we left it. But I think the problem when you talk about resilience is I know we said we're not allowed to swear, but I'm going to have to give it real good context here. Resilience ultimately is your ability to deal with all right, and the hard thing about resilience is you need to go through to be able to deal with it. The only way you can counteract that is by doing other hard things. So if you're not going through a tragedy or a trauma right now, then you need to be able to go through hard things. So the problem is what we try to do now is give people advice about when they've already gone through the hardship. They've gone on with their mum's died, the wife's left them, the husband's left them, the kids got poorly. You need to go way back up river before that. And I always think there's some real simple stuff that most of society don't do. So I always think there's 5 things to look after yourself. First one's a good night's sleep, which most people struggle with. We don't even focus on that. In fact, most people will talk about in the mental health or mindset or motivation space around morning routine. Your evening routine's far more important than your morning routine, in my opinion. It's only an opinion. I think sleep is the number one fundamental that everyone needs to get right. And if even in this room, if you just put your hand up and say who has a poor night's sleep, I'd take a guess now that 85%, that's quite specific, would say that they have a poor night's sleep. You can try it if you want.
Let's have a look. So can you put your hand up if you consider yourself to have poor sleep?
Oh, a good guess, wasn't it? Because what we got for probably about 85% now, would you get? Not far off. And that's interesting, right? And if I ask them same people who wakes up most days feeling meh or can't be, a lot of the time, most people, without even admit that, would say, yeah, again, low energy. But if you look at this, and we can go either really baseline, or we can go deeper on this, right? But a good night's sleep's really important for chemical purposes and other reasons. But we'll keep it really baseline. Good night's sleep should give you energy, which then means the next day you probably want to move, get out of bed, go to work, play with your kids, spend time with your wife or your husband, or do things that you enjoy. So you want to move, and that's, call it exercise, just moving in general. Movement takes a little bit of energy, but usually makes you feel like you've got energy after. Diet, most of us have highly processed foods. I'm not going to get into try convincing bodybuilders here today, but if you eat 8% whole foods as a baseline, you've probably got more chance of having more energy, because food's designed for one thing and one thing only. Most of us in here have probably already had 2 or 3 coffees just to get us out of bed today. Yeah, I see people laughing because that's what we do. Yeah. Well, actually, what we need first thing in the morning is to be hydrated, right? Because when our cells are hydrated, we've got energy. And finally, when you do things for yourself, so you time, spending time with people you care about, doing things you enjoy, you've got energy. But if you role reverse this and say you don't have a good night's sleep, last thing you've got is energy. Next day, then you don't want to move, but you know you've got commitments, you've got to move, but you can't be bothered. So you eat a lot of sugary stuff to help get you up. You then drink a lot of caffeine, and then by the time evening comes, you're in 2 states. One is you're wired, so you can't sleep again because you've drank too much caffeine all day, or you crash out by 5 o'clock. You can't be bothered spending time with people you care about, doing things you enjoy. Now you're in what we call a negative cycle, which then becomes most people's norm because that's just their baseline. So then now if you took this to a 0 to 10 scale, 0 being surviving, 5 being coping, and 10 being thriving, most people are always flickering between 0 and 5. So when mum does die or something bad does happen, you then get knocked out surviving, but everyone in here's got to go to work. They've all got to pay the bills. So now you try to survive through a problem which is near impossible, but we soldier on and we get through it. And then we wonder why it's a straw that breaks the camel's back, because we're already just surviving anyway. But if you're looking after them 5 things, you're being really boring and consistent and still having your treat days and still having other stuff, so you're not just living this meh life. If you have the energy, and now you're floating between a 5 and a 10, when something bad happens, the same bad thing happens to you, now you can cope through that problem. And it's far easier to cope through a problem than it is to survive through a problem. So therefore now we've got to go way back upriver to tell someone this. But actually most people don't want to know this until they're already in that bad place, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you put it so simply. And, you know, there's a number of circumstances there that you've mentioned that I can connect with, and I can place myself on that scale at various points, and I'm sure people here can. I'm sure there's people here that, you know, we've all experienced trauma, grief, loss, you know, of some kind, and I'm sure that will really resonate with people about where you were on that scale and what you were doing to sort of help yourself and support yourself through that. But it can be really difficult, can't it, to have that clarity? And like you say, extremely difficult when you're in the midst of a trauma of some kind. You talked about sort of waiting 3 months to talk to your mother-in-law. So just explain to me how, from a sort of standing still starting point, you set up Andy's Man Club, and what your vision for it was, and how you went about putting that in motion.
Yeah, and I'll explain why, if you a rewind just a minute. The reason why I told you them 5 things is when Andy died, I was in the best possible physical and mental space I'd ever been in. And I mean the best. And I was so religious in how disciplined I live. I was pushing myself hard in other ways to combat that, because we've got to do hard things so his mind knows what we're capable of. And this is why you've got to push yourself. You've got to go run a little bit further sometimes. You've got to do stuff that feel like you don't really want to do, because your mind gets used to, I can cope it, I can get through things. And I was doing that. So when Andy died, it was like, oh my God, I'm in this unbelievable space, yet this horrible thing's happened. But I felt like I could cope through it, where maybe other people in them circumstances would have been in a real dark spot about it. It was just so much clarity because of how much of a trauma I'd been through to get to that point. And so when I approached my mother-in-law, I was already in this real space of it. It was clear as day. Like if I could have wrote it down what I wanted to happen, it were there. And it's just manifested itself in a way as Andy's Man Club. So I'll set the scene. I approached my mother-in-law. I asked if we could set this club up. Originally, we were going to call Andy Roberts Coffee Club. Really name. she said, I don't want it to be just about Andy, this problem's too big. At the time, I were having a coffee and in a greasy spoon and a breakfast every Saturday morning, just what we used to call Man Club. It were no mental health based, it was just me, a rugby player called Keith Senior who lived with me at the time, my dad and a couple of mates would just meet and we'd talk crap basically. And then she'd gone away and thought of an acronym Andy's, so that if someone was struggling, they could say I'm off to Andy's. It didn't seem that it had to be embarrassing. And we put them together and Andy's Man Club were born. And I'll never forget, we were at a place down in Dean Clough called Engine Room, and it was like the Times Now, and I just put a post out on Facebook and it got a lot of people interested. You know, this sounds amazing, it's just what's needed. And at the time I didn't know exactly how it would work in terms of the group setting, because everyone told me that guys don't talk, and I knew that myself from the environment I was in as a professional rugby player, that men don't talk. So I thought we might have to play sport. Where I were up at the Freeway Centre, we had access to a gym, we had access to the sports centre, so I thought we might have to do something like that. But first night we get up there, me and Elaine, and I said, Elaine, if one guy comes, just one guy, it'll be a nice feeling. I said, if no one comes, we'll just keep turning up. So she'd gone to Morrison's, bought tea and coffee, we'd sat down in there and 9 blokes turned up, which we couldn't believe. It was just like, wow. And it was probably one of the most powerful nights of my life, because no one knew what to expect. There were a random dirty foam ball just outside his chair that I'd picked up and I'd started playing with, and I was picking it. And then I remember one of the blokes who'd come just said, chuck that ball here, kid. So I chucked it him and he just opened up. Then he passed it to the next guy, and then the next guy. And then week after we said, we've got to come again. And this week 15 men turned up. And then I went home and I decided that if 15 men can turn up to a group where men don't talk in 2 weeks, how many more men want to know about this? So I sat on toilet. It's irrelevant to the story, but all best ideas come on toilet, don't they? And I took a selfie, now off the toilet. And
well, thank God for that.
Yeah. And I said, tag 5 people and let them know it's okay to talk. And I remember picking my partner about it. She's like, oh, it's a good idea, because everyone at the minute's doing, like, I think it were ice bucket challenge and press up challenge, stuff that were a bit of fun. So yeah, I just think this is simple. I think it just gives people what they need to know. And it had a bit of stats in there as well, just for people to be like, wow, I can't believe that's the biggest threat to my life. You know, let's tell people it's okay to talk. Straight away it gathered momentum. As soon as I put the full out, rugby players started doing it. I think within 4 weeks it had reached 100 million people. And it were, at the time, I think the Samaritans at their social media said categorised one of the biggest mental health movements on planet, because there's no ever that's just gone that big. I remember it trending in Australia and America. It were 5th at the time on the whole of Twitter and Instagram. It had gone real big. But then off the back of that, telling men to talk, you need to give them space to do so. And I'll never forget, some guy, I think it was from one of the main newspapers, had rang me and just said, and I always really wound me up this, because he'd said, so is this going to be a fad? And I'm like, what do you mean a fad? And he's like, well, you know, like Ice Bucket Challenge. And I remember Ice Bucket Challenge, I don't know if everyone knows it, it raised like £100 million Ice Bucket Challenge for ALS. And I said, I hope it is that, but in a different sense, because we're not bothered about raising money, but that we get more money. Well, how are you going to do it? I said, well, I'll have 10 clubs in 5 years. And it sounded such a big goal to have 10 of these groups in 5 years. And I'll fast forward, on his 5th birthday, opened his 50th group. You know, so we had 50 groups within 5 years. We're now just come to 9-year-old, and I've never had many pinch me. I've done some mad stuff for AMC. I've been invited to some crazy stuff that I never thought a kid from Ovingdon as a single parent back would ever get invited to. But the pinch myself moment, where I actually just sat down road here in a coffee shop 2 weeks ago when I sat with our now head of groups for England and Wales, and he told me that in Q1 this year we're going to open 50 groups. And yeah, I don't know why that one moment, it was like a flashback to that 5 years and how big that goal was to have 10 clubs and then open his 50th club, which is this real big thing. And now to have, in just Q1 of this year, 50 clubs, taking us to over the 300 mark, you know. So we've now got just short of 6,000 men every single Monday night turning up at our groups, opening doors. And, you know, I think the biggest accolade I've ever had from it is on a school run one day when a guy beelined for me. And he said, you're the Andy's Man Club guy, aren't you? And I said, depends who's asking. I thought, I can't be fighting him in playground, can I? Right? And I says, he said, no, I know it's you. And he says, I just want to let you know I wouldn't have been able to drop my daughter off at school if it weren't for your group, because I won't be here. And it's like, that for me has always been like, that one moment has just always stuck with me more than any other. Yeah. The big stuff I've never been for, like, and I mean literally not even in an humble sense, I just like never been for it. It just never bothered me, because the real big stuff is like that moment where that daughter still has a dad. That's big. You know, the other stuff is just a byproduct, really.
I mean, you know, I'm getting a sense of the scale there now of the movement that you've created. Do you think there's still a stigma for men around mental health? and what more can be done to sort of break down that barrier?
So I think there's always going to be stigmas around anything. You know, there's different people. You could get two different people and, you know, tell them it's okay to talk, and one will keep talking, and one might talk for one time and then go and do something else. But talking is just the first step. You know, first step is acceptance. You've got to accept you've got a problem. That's not even in mental health. That's with drink, drugs, finances, how you've been as a parent. You've got to have an acceptance of what you're doing is not right now, or that it's not okay. And then once you accept that, you've got to take necessary measures, aren't you? Which for some people's talking, for some people, I spoke to a guy today who said he ran into his problems, and that's what he did. He got into running. I think you've just got to find your thing. I think at Andy's Man Club, it's never about where Andy's Man Club, everyone should go. Andy's Man Club, it's for everyone. It's open to everyone, but it's not going to be for everyone. Some people's worst nightmare going into a room full of a load of blokes and talking to them. Some people, it might be that just getting into a fitness routine sorts you out. It might be going and getting a better sleep routine. It might be leaving your job, leaving your partner. Like, you've got to find your thing. So I think the stigmas have had a really good hammering. I just think now there needs to be some action that follows that from people. So I think now really it's not really about mental health awareness. Everyone knows about mental health now. Everyone knows, you know, what's been done over the last, you know, decade, not just from Andy's Man Club, but from a host of organisations, even now down to, you know, they wouldn't have been a topic many years ago in an expert lounge, you know. So I think the awareness is definitely out there, but people now need to start taking accountability to better their mental health. That's a big one.
So, you've talked about the sort of scale of that movement now. What excites you most about the work that you're contributing, the contribution that you're making to men's mental health around the UK?
Yeah, so I've always been entrepreneurial, right? So I've always had, even when I played rugby, I've always had some form of business. And we were just talking over there then. What's really nice about running Andy's Man Club from an actual organisational sense is that, so I'm voluntary CEO of Andy's Man Club, which is quite rare. So I'm also chair of trustees, but I'm voluntary CEO, which means I get to run it like a proper organisation would be, which is sort of full time, but I don't get paid for it. So therefore, I don't make decisions based on what will be left in pot end of year. So I have my own company, and you've got to run your company very different. But with AMC, it's so purpose-led. But what I've learned now as a leader is that there's different tiers to leadership, which people maybe don't necessarily understand. So everyone's got to be a leader within your organisation. Even that was facilitators, the actual group that they're in is called Andy's Man Club leaders. So they are the leaders of Andy's Man Club, of each individual group. And then we have area leads, regional leads, and then we have a leadership team. And then what I get most excited about now is leading through others. And I think that's as you move up the leadership chain from micromanaging people or managing people to then leading, but it's like leading through them. So now it no longer requires necessarily you to be involved in every decision, but you set up a culture and a set of values and beliefs and standards that then it's really nice when I now see someone talking about something that were a decision made 10 years ago, and they're now driving that message, but without me needing to, and then seeing the development of them grow as leaders. But I'm also, I love to challenge people. I'm big on that, and I don't mean critique. I like to challenge people to grow. So I get most excited now about seeing the people at Andy's Man Club who are Andy's Man Club, who are the leaders, testing what their possible is and seeing how far they can go. Because what's beautiful at Andy's Man Club, we have 38 full-time staff, of which 27 are guys who've walked through the door. So guys who've walked through the door as a user, become a facilitator, and now are leading a group. And now we're working full-time for an organisation.
An organisation like yours, you were very much the sort of figurehead for it. And when you scale anything up like that, to get quality and consistency across a much bigger organisation can be really difficult, and it's where a lot of organisations fail. So, you talked about challenging people, but what would you say have been the things that have helped you to maintain, what the culture that you've tried to create?
Every problem we've had, because every problem we've had has brought everyone closer together. We've just dealt with a horrific thing this last week or so, like a real big problem for our organisation, which we've come through together. And I've just realised that every time there's been some everyone has really come together, and that's when you then re-emphasise just the importance of that team. I also was very fortunate. I played in a few different rugby teams, but two always stand out to me. One being Salford City Reds and one being Leeds Rhinos. So Salford City Reds were a culture that we're very much, we're all good friends, right? And people think that that's how you should be as a team, right? You should all be good friends. Leeds Rhinos were a little bit more of well, they were just a winning team. You had people like Kevin Sinfield as your captain, right? And that's no disrespect to anyone at all, but when you've got Kevin Sinfield as your captain, who challenges you to be your best self, but not in a way that's negative, or you leave a conversation going, he's just called there, or I feel bad like I've left his presence. He just challenges you to be better. And then you saw what he did for Rob when Rob went through his hardship, and everyone in that team did. You know, we all did stuff for Rob and went and saw him. And I think the culture at Leeds, and I had this with a general manager recently, so I don't like any form of office politics. I just, and you know, and this isn't a good practice for most places. You might not get away with it in most places, but if I know that you don't like you, I'll just bring you in and just have it out. It's just easier. Because if you keep thinking that she's not very good and she keeps saying stuff behind your back, it just manifests. So I always think, let's just get you in a room and go, tell her your problem. Oh, well, blah, blah, right, now you're telling me that, right, boom. And then suddenly, actually, they both have a little cry, they both have a little cuddle, and then they leave. And everyone's cool again. But that's how it would have been at Leeds. There would have been no backstabbing. It would have just been let's get it out of the way. And now, when I had the conversation with GM, she's like, when you get to a certain size, I don't know if you can control culture. She says, you can always control culture, because culture is what underpins everything. Like, if you get the culture right, everyone will buy into that. And those that don't, I will have to leave. That's what you've got. That's the hardest bit. You know, you've got to keep driving them. So when I say what's been the most, you know, successful, or the highlight, is driving that culture there and constantly trying to maintain it. Because you know, as you had more characters in there, more individuals, people that are coming in who maybe didn't come through the AMC door. Because remember, it's very easy with the 27 people, because they live, breathe and die for this place now for what it's done for them. You know, that's easy to instill that culture. It's the other people you're bringing in that, and you need to better try adopt them same mentalities.
So I think, just unpicking what you've said, it's about, you know, some of that culture is about openness, transparency, supportive challenge, a challenging but supportive environment for staff to work in. You've talked about the fact that you're CEO of Andy's Man Club, a voluntary position, but you run your business as well. How do you balance those two things? And
I don't.
You don't?
There's no such thing, is there?
Well, I mean, my question was going to be, really, what you're doing sounds like there would be an incredible amount of stress that comes from it. So, you know, you've got this vision, and I mean, it sounds like it's got really big. Is there a point where some days that's worrying about how big it is? How do you manage that stress personally when you're running a business and this huge organisation?
So just to give context, we run a company where we deliver wellbeing enrichment, culture induction programs. At minute, as main contract with MOD on army base over UK. So there's a lot going on there. Plus, we're in prison, schools, businesses. We do a lot of different interventions and programs. And then we have a journal, business, schools programs within all that. And then we have Andy's Man Club, and then I'm a dad of three, but I'm quite active in terms of that. I like to bring them to all the clubs, and my kids are very monkey see, monkey do. So because I'm really into my endurance, my kids have got into endurance without being pushed. It's just, you know, I think kids will always follow what they see, not what they say, not what they've been told. So my kids are Harriers every night, they're CrossFit, they're gymnastics. So, but I like to be as much as I can. While also just taking on, it's just to give context, I think called Mission Possible this year for Andy's Man Club. So taking on all 5 UK Ironman events, plus we've got the 3 great runs, a marathon for one of our staff who died by an heart attack, calling Darren's Footsteps down in Southampton, and then Yorkshire Free Peaks, and then just for a laugh, I'm taking my dad to Tenerife to cycle Mount Teede. So when you say about balance, I'm not always, you know, it's a nice word, but I'm not ever sure that you get balance, but I love chaos, is what I'll get into. I do love chaos. So some people, the idea of what my life's like and how I'm constantly one thing to the next, it would blow their head off. It would blow my head off if I had to sit at home for 4 hours. I just, you know, me and my kids have probably ingrained them to be like, no, we're always off doing something. And I think that's the problem when you give advice to people. And this is what we were talking about a second ago about stress. Like, there's some fundamental principles of stress, you know, getting your breath right, you know, how we process stuff, how we think about stuff, chemically getting your balances right. But we're all different in this room. And some people like need you time. Where I probably am selfish to be selfless is I am very disciplined in a few areas. One being sleep. and never neglect that ever. Like, and I mean, it's like, I can't emphasize how boring I am with sleep. I go to bed earlier at night. I don't have a late Friday or Saturday night just because it's weekend. I go to bed same time every night, and I pride myself on getting a good sleep score on my watch, right? Proper nerd. And I also have a lot of me time in terms of, like, I go to sauna a lot. I go out and walk my dog on my own a lot. Like, because I'm with people all day, I like to process stuff. What a lot of people don't like doing now is spending time alone with their own thoughts. So, and that's what I love. I love hearing what's going on inside my own head. So sitting in a sauna with no phone, 30 minutes, it gets a little bit uncomfortable. You can't help but find out what insecurities are going on or what you're worried about. And that's when then it gives you time to process them about what you're going to do about it. And that's my biggest thing, is no matter how chaotic life gets, it's always, okay, look, what are you going to do about this? And it's not the old, you know, when someone's going through a real hard time, control the controllables. It's like the most off you'll ever be when someone says that to you. But when you flip it to yourself, like, what can I actually do in this moment? And for some people, I'm going to go right back to in about that hour. For some people, it's just that you can breathe right now, that's it. Just take a moment for yourself. And I often think that when we're in the heat of anything, or when stress is, but I tell my kids all the time when they're getting stressed out, panic creates panic. If you're panicked, it'll create panic around everyone around you. You've got to be the person that just takes a breath. Okay, what we're doing now? What can we do? And I think when I've got so many balls in the air, you're going to drop a few. That's inevitable. I don't think you're ever going to get it right. I'm not always going to get it right with my kids, partner. I'm not always going to get it right with Andy's man club thing. But as long as you're trying your best, that's the main thing. And then learning and adapting along the way.
Obviously, you've done an incredible job in building what you have. Is there any advice that you wish you'd had prior to setting out on this journey that you would now be able to give to other people? What would that be?
No, really bad answer that, wasn't it? Because, well, I think everyone always wants to go back and like you say, what advice would you give to your younger self? And you sit there and think, it's all going to be okay. Like, I think it's good sometimes to know, like, is it going to be okay? Like, let's go through this bit of hardship and let's see. And would I have? Have you ever heard of the chaos theory?
Yeah.
So, I'm really big on this. Like, how one, butterfly flap of wings could have wide effects elsewhere. And I always think that's what Andy's man club is. It's just one small thing that happened in Halifax that's now having, I could drive down Southampton and I can see a banner up on a wall. I can see a kid's rugby team and they've got a OK sign. Someone's husband's golf team in North Manchester sponsoring, having his charity, like stuff that I don't even know about now. But that were all because that one little thing that happened sat on that toilet that day where it were like, let's make a movement. So if someone would have warned me along the way that, like, and a good example here is you live in a small town, people are going to have opinions of what you've done here. You're going to get a lot of you're going to struggle with that for a while, about other people's opinion. Then I want to learn how to deal with that. So I feel like every single thing that's happened, would I go back and change my mum's car crash if I could? Of course. Andy's deaf, but I can't. So I just think that whatever's happened to me was the card that were chosen to be dealt with. Whether you believe in Allah, God, or whatever you believe in, that was just the destiny it was meant to be. But my favourite saying of all time is, it's not what's happened to you, but how you respond that matters. And I live by that each day. So it wouldn't have mattered if I went back, because I wouldn't have been who I am right now.
I'm going to ask you two final questions. I could chat to you all day, and I'm sure everyone would love to hear a lot more, Luke. What does the next 5-10 years look like for Andy's Man Club?
If I'm being honest, I don't know. I know that we're going to just keep doing what we do every single day. We always had a saying that you can't stop, won't stop, because once we'd lifted the lid on this problem, it's just spiralling. So I know that by as 10th birthday, which is a year in June the 30th, we will open his 500th group, which, to want to open 10 groups in 5 years, to open 500 groups in 10 years is a real nice thing. So we'll definitely, at that point, then on the average number, remember, we'll be helping over 10,000 men a week. That's a real big thing for us. But in terms of anything else, it's just all a byproduct. We've been very lucky to have big partnerships, sit on government boards and have meetings with the Royals, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that more dads, brothers, uncles, sons, cousins, granddads are still here as a result of just being able to go and have a conversation in a space with a lot of strangers. And that's what we'll keep doing. Where we'll be in 5-10 years, maybe we won't be here. And that won't be a bad thing. Maybe people are sat now, in coffee shops or saunas instead of having a chat with people, as opposed to needing this space. So it's quite a weird goal for an organisation to not want to exist, but it'd be nice if we didn't have to. I don't think we'll get to that in my lifetime, but because I think male spaces are really important. I think we've got a lack of that now, where men can just go and just be men. So I think it's really important. So I think even if it wasn't there from a mental health capacity, just from a social capacity, guys going and sitting, having a brew and having a chat with some strangers is going to be important. So we'll just keep doing exactly what we're doing.
You know, you're incredibly inspiring. You know, you talk with real power, but with sensitivity too. I know you said it's difficult to look back and give advice because the cards you dealt are the cards you dealt, but we end every podcast by asking the guests to imagine that they could go back and send their younger self a text. Just a really simple, short message. What would yours say?
Deep, yeah. What would I tell them? Put text in, so probably just a thumbs up. No, I just think just keep smiling. I'm really big on, you know, I know we've been serious today, but I love, and Charlotte's who here, any of my team. In fact, I asked my team the other day, because I thought I'm going to put on, I was doing a podcast, and I thought I'm just going to put on, I said, what's it like to work with me? And each one of them in their own way said it's creative whirlwind, you're a good chaos, you know, you come in and put a rocket up here, like it's just chaos. And a lot of times, because I just think life's very short, like very short. I've had a lot of death. I'm going to a funeral literally in 1 hour from now, and a lot of death. And you know, when you go to a funeral, everyone always says that same, oh, we've got to live for a day, haven't we, because someone died. Like, I think that happened to me when I was a kid, and I've genuinely believed it. Like, so ingrained in me that, like, I want to take every single second that I can and, like, live. And that's probably why sometimes probably a bit much for those people around me all the time. You know, people around me all the time, because I'm constantly want to just go and live. And I think if I was summing it up, I'd just put, just keep living. Because I think, and that's why it's ironic that I run a suicide prevention charity. And it is. And I always thought that, because I love life so much, that is the lighthouse in the dark times for people. That I genuinely love this.
Yeah. Look, it's been brilliant to talk to you. I'm really grateful that you've joined us today and shared so openly your experiences and your journey.